probably do some projections into tomorrow, which will be a working day. Those of you at home, I'm sure you're enjoying your couch and your sofas, but hopefully tomorrow you'll be at work. Good morning, Kasie, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Martin.
I'm sure, what would you have been doing ordinarily if we hadn't pulled you out of bed?
Definitely, I would have been catching up on the sleep that I'm overdue. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Issues that have dominated discussions in the last 3 or 4 days, certainly independence. And yesterday, you know, the students went to march, the military, the president spoke, the opposition leader also spoke and said that he didn't expect that kind of speech from the president, was expecting something new. What in the first place do you make of Ghana's 59 years?
Well, I believe that the independence celebration yesterday, for me, was probably one of the most meaningful that I've experienced. I say that because it usually was just simple fanfare. Probably because I was more attentive this year. And probably because, I must confess, I was looking forward to the visit by Uhuru Kenyatta. A man that I've come to respect a lot, seems to be very easy in his skin, and he did not disappoint. And our president delivered arguably one of his best speeches.
Well, maybe we'll come to...
Now, for me, that is the high point of the independence celebration.
Okay.
You see, I've always thought that all our politicians, whether in or out of power, use every opportunity to talk politics. You meet them at a funeral ground, they smuggle in politics. You meet them at an outdooring, they smuggle in politics. Everything becomes politics, to the point that they make an appearance in church probably once in a year, and for some reason they are given the podium or the lectern and they deliver a speech in politics. So it was particularly refreshing that even though the president did not deviate from politics, he went Pan-African.
Yeah.
Since you are not too keen on my discussing this speech yet, I'll tell you that I also liked the turnout. There was much more professionalism. Those who came to march were crisp and proper. I've always had problems as to whether the march past is not a very serious hangover from the colonial era, and whether probably like Magufuli of Tanzania, we will not want to be using that day for a different project. But I believe, and thankfully there was no rain, and the sun was a bit more merciful, so the kids did not have to endure all of that.
There have been calls that the celebration, the relevance and the essence of the celebration seem to be lost on us, is it?
I'm surprised. We need to be reminded every year the cost of our independence. Just like every year as a Roman Catholic, I'm reminded in Lent that Jesus Christ suffered and died for me. And that's well over 2,000 years ago. I'm not even going to bother about it.
So it is in order that every
Indeed
year...
it is. Otherwise, we will trivialize the importance of the occasion.
Could there be other ways of celebrating it than just the regular march, bring students, bring the security forces, they come and march, the president gives a speech and that's it?
The president mentioned quite unambiguously yesterday that to bring the school children was not just for entertainment, if I am paraphrasing him. It is to involve them and to give them first-hand experience, knowledge. One would hope that during the independence celebration, there will be highlights, there will be remembrances of the sacrifices that went into getting independence for us. My very good friend Alfred Hughes, whom I was listening, giving some commentary, GBC, gave some background information as to how the 1948 riots came about. He was joined by a lady whose name I do not remember. And I believe that in typical Ghanaian style, we will always find an occasion to come up with what should not, and we are very, very short of what should be. And I have not particularly thought, if we are going to keep them in the tradition of yesterday, I think we need to keep that tradition. They say a country that does not respect its heroes is not worth dying for. And the rest of the year we are busy at each other's throats. If this one day we are going to dedicate
that then brings the next question of, should it be that, just that one day, that we use to, you know, remind ourselves and to tell or teach children of the fact that the world, or Ghana for that matter, has gone beyond just the fact that it was on Independence Day, 6th March, that it got its independence. I'm thinking a lot more along the lines of having us understand that we could use other platforms or other ways of getting people, or especially pupils, to follow and know and understand these things. Should it always have to be on the 6th of March that we do this? I know it's a significant day, but quite apart from that, what else can we do to send down that message of patriotism that we want our children to follow?
Thank you very much, Martin, for finally allowing me to address one of the concerns that I have, which is the role of the NCCE, the National Commission on Civic Education. I wasn't around. I hear before I was of school-going age, they had something called civic studies. My mother speaks rather fondly of those classes, those lessons. I believe that all year round, Ghanaians, especially the young ones, should be reminded, in fact, first of all, taught about our history and taught about what precipitated our independence. And probably that way we'll be able to address the death of patriotism. You see, when I was growing up, and I used to also do the march past, some of my classmates don't agree, but I think I led the school for the 6 years I was in primary school. Okay. Not because I was particularly good, but for some other reasons. But I felt prouder then that I was a Ghanaian. And the other time I felt proud was when I visited Guinea. It seems that when we go out of this country, we become more proud of ourselves. When we are home, it's a different story. So to answer your question, I think that we should concern ourselves with teaching the next generation about our history, and that should be the job of the NCCE, among other things, that our history should be part of our curriculum, that people should understand. Today, even if you ask the average person before 1957, their only answer is going to be that we were called Gold Coast. But by way of migratory history, by way of the composition of this country, by way of who came to settle where, and the power relations before. Because with all that type of information, one will understand the dynamics of today's politics. And one of my favorite books, even though I came later to learn that it was ridiculously jaundiced, was Adubuahin's History of Ghana. And today I do not know whether to still go by the stories or the narratives in it or not. I'm also told that F.K. Boas was more authoritative. Now that is a discussion that should be more serious. In fact, I do not know if there is a historical commission in this country. I've said on another occasion or another platform, it seems that journalists are writing the history of this country. And with all respect to your profession, which I respect a lot, journalists are not exactly chroniclers of fact. They are purveyors of opinion. And I think that maybe there should be a national historical society. If there is, I haven't heard of one, and I'm radically interested in history. I ought to have heard of it. But we need to have a commission that will write down the history of this country, safe from the ubiquitous political binoculars that people are using, and maybe bringing
in the issue of having to get children to at least be interested and be patriotic right from the onset, rather than a whole nation waiting until the 6th of March to acknowledge this day. What are we missing something, or we are on the right path of getting the children, especially and then the youth, to follow in the patriotism of our forefathers?
I cannot speak for how the children feel about Ghana, but I can definitely posit that the way we, the adults, are behaving, we are confusing them, to say the least. In fact, some of them, the more discerning ones, are probably disappointed that they are Ghanaians. You see, the world has come so close to us. Our iPhones, our mobile phones, our iPads, has brought the world so close to us that a child can actually go into the virtual world and experience at least a semblance of what is in country A or B or C or D. And it looks like we are distinguishing ourselves as the most acrimonious political country in terms of our party politics. I mean, I hear some people making apologetic excuses that in other parliaments people throw chairs at each other. But that is not the standard we should hold ourselves by. So, can we do more? The way I felt as a kid, the way I felt about Ghana, the way I grew up glued to the radio when then Chairman Rawlings was speaking, the way the adults all paid attention to the president's speech, the way independence, and I grew up in Navrongo Bolga, and you know this time of the year is terribly hot, but for some reason we're oblivious of the sun on such a day, and we look forward to drinking a bottle of Fanta or probably sharing with 2 other people. Yeah. And even then, we felt more Ghanaian, we felt prouder. Okay. So I think we are probably not giving a good example. And if I were a kid, I would be wondering exactly who is speaking the truth. This Uncle John Mahama says this, and Uncle Nana Akufo-Addo says that, and there are 2 elders, and they say elders don't lie. So where are they going to, you know, take their lessons from? Okay,
let me bring in Amoah Duncan, who has also joined us. He's the Executive Secretary of COPEC, is it? And I want to say happy belated Independence Day to you. How are you doing?
Very well, Martin. Yes. Let me wish Ghanaians, like you said, a belated Independence Day and a fruitful year ahead where most of our challenges would all confront together. In saying so, let me also not forget that yesterday being historic was also the birthday of some very important people in Ghana. You talk of the First Lady and a host of others who had their birthday celebrations yesterday. Okay. We could only say good morning and Aiko and hope that the star that shines on the country would actually shine on them, and they would also be able to confront their challenges.
Are we as a nation still as patriotic as before? See what 10, 15 years ago compared to now?
Martin, there's a typical shift in the way things were pre-colonial, post-colonial, even talk of some of us are post-coup d'etat babies, you know. You would agree most Ghanaians who were born post-81 have till date not an experience what it means to overthrow a government using the military means. And so, like you would rightly say, some people today take a lot of things for granted. And it is actually presumed that peace is a natural phenomenon and that man would live in peace with his fellow human being. But that is not true. Peace is actually the effort of man to live in some harmony with the other human being. It's an effort. And so once you keep shifting and keep dividing your people on political lines, then you would actually agree with me. A time might come, Ghanaians would not need a coup d'etat actually to change government, but the both ends of the political divide may think that indeed we should stand up for our rights, we should stand for our political tradition instead of our nation. So a time comes when the NDC, NPP
national
flags,
unity becomes at variance to political,
you know, people feel more connected to political groupings today than they should feel towards their nation. If you drive around town,
why is that? Where did we go wrong? I mean,
maybe just by accident that I was around during the revolutionary days, I probably give a better insight. You see, your original question was whether people were more patriotic then. Yes, they were more patriotic because somebody, a group of people had put their lives on the line, justifiably or otherwise, for the prosperity of this country. Well, some people may call me a Rawlings apologist, but that was the first time I had heard, and probably afterwards, very few people have emulated, but our president actually got into the gutter in Nima. Today, district chief executives will probably not even take a broom to their own veranda. But that was the chairman, whether he was chairman of the Armed Forces Revolution or PNDC, it does not matter. But there was example of selflessness in this country. In '81, I had just arrived in secondary school. I was sufficiently literate to hear Rawlings on his various addresses. Of course, a lot can be said against what happened. It was an upheaval of a constitutional regime, etc. All I am saying is that the vibe in Ghana, there was a renewed purpose. I also know, even not by personal experience, that this whole concept of national service was because there were some strikes in the universities and there was a backlog, and those who were waiting to go to university and those who had just come out, I'm told, were actually asked to go into the hinterland and help to bring the produce onto, to the harbors. People worked. I know district chief executives who were walking around in Firestone sandals. For the avoidance of that, Firestone was sandals that were made out of car tires. And it was not because they could not get it. It was a deliberate attempt to express to the people that there was a country called Ghana, and we all wanted to make. When they said tighten your belts.
Let me just get Amoah to land on his points, then we can
see, Martin, I think where I was developing from is the changing times, right? If a leader emerges in 21st century and would want to behave or do the things of 20th century or 18th century, that leader will be completely irrelevant. I'm saying this because, like Ricky was pointing out, you came to a point in our history where we had a common enemy. We had a common enemy, the oppressor, the colonial master. So it didn't matter which part of the country you came from, but there was a white man who said, you cannot even make laws till I promulgate them in Britain and forward it back to you. How much taxes you pay would all have to be determined overseas, and then we in turn compel you to do whatever. So the Ghanaian back in 56, pre-independence, could have been a lot more united, a lot more focused, because there was a common enemy, which is the colonialist. Now, fast forward to post-independence, and then the Ghanaian now begins to reassert himself, okay, their individual choices or preferences. One, we are able to get rid of the colonial master. The second point is that our destinies are now in our own hands. Are we going to take up that challenge, you know, from this political tradition, the UP tradition, the CPP tradition, you know? So you would recall that right at the onset of independence, the UP tradition never allowed the CPP that peace of mind to actually govern, because then you have a common, interest. Okay. The governance of the country is now at stake. Fast forward to 2016, we are still confronted by the same enemy, the enemy within. It is no longer the oppressor from without that we all need to come together to fight. But today, it is more of who controls what resources, which party is actually in government, who gives what ministerial appointments to who appoints what, who shares what resources. So, Martin, in rehashing all of this, the challenges Ghana is faced with today would not be the same challenges that Nkrumah would have faced back at independence, where he needed...
Times have changed.
Have changed drastically. And I think we are rather changing for the worse as a people, like I indicated. Today, Ghanaians will rather associate more politically than nationally. So you would drive around and people have NPP, NDC colors in their vehicles, which says that I am a proud NDC person, I'm a proud NPP person, but how many are even flying the national flag?
I think we only do that when there's a
national event. Yes, Black Stars are playing, and you know. But we are losing the essence of nationhood. Okay. And today it is more political on all of us. If you wake up in the morning and it is not MPP, NDC, people are not even interested. Come sit and talk about building, you know, the economy or building the infrastructure base. People would say, oh, per these views, this guy belongs here. So we no longer see ourselves as Ghanaians. When Kofi
sharply divided.
Sharply divided. And that for me is a danger sign, Martin. We need to actually do a lot more.
Okay. Well, one other issue that was discussed over the weekend was the Asante Hino 2432 commenting on the developments in Old Tafo and then Agogo. And because of that, because of the developments, especially in Agogo, they boycotted the 6th match event. So the students didn't go there too much, neither did the security agencies. But let's bring in the bit about Agogo and Asante Hene's position that he was going to deal with it. From the chieftaincy's perspective, is that a possibility of, properly dealing with something that seems to have a national scale?
You see, if I take that briefly,
let me touch on it then.
We had institutions, even pre-colonial era, that were mighty and even overbearing on their subjects. The chieftaincy institution is one of them. In fact, before the coming of the white man, before the formation of a nation called Ghana, what we naturally had was chieftains, across the length and breadth of the country, where people sort of bore allegiance to those chiefs or kings. And so they were likely to listen to them. Their rulings were final. If you are banished, you are banished. If you are punished, you are punished. Today, there's the federal government, or there's a central government. There's a codified system of laws. Okay? So when people even have a grievance, the chieftaincy institution no longer becomes the sort of redress that they seek. They go to court. And you and I know, Martin, the courts will go back and forth on a single issue, sometimes 10, 15, 20 years. The issue of Agogo is one that every Ghanaian should be concerned about. You have other Ghanaians like you and I who go about their normal duties and are confronted and sometimes annihilated completely by people who probably are moving around with their heads, and would need to feed them. So somebody has spent money to put a farm together. You come from nowhere. It's just like the rule of arbitrariness. Anything at all.
Is it possible, is Asante Hene's position powerful enough to put finality to this issue?
It is possible he can influence it.
Okay.
But as to whether he will be able to bring finality to all of it, he would need a lot more than the chieftaincy institution. And I am beginning to wonder whether the politicians really are interested in finding peace in those flash areas. If they boycotted the independence, I would agree with them. Although I would have wished...
Because they think it's a national issue and they needed some national attention.
If people's lives are not being guaranteed, I go to my farm, I meet a Fulani person who says, would you sleep with me or cut down your crops for my animals to graze on? If you don't, then I shoot you. And these things are being perpetrated day.
Is that a position?
Then it's indeed a
Martin,
challenge.
I am taking this to a completely different level. I'm happy that the president of Guinea-Bissau was here yesterday, because one of the foremost Pan-Africanists, Amilcar Cabral, said, and I quote, "There are no conflicts between Africans. There are only conflicts among the elites. The only time there is conflict among Africans is when they are mobilized by the elite for the attainment of elite goals."
Unquote.
Unquote. The point I'm simply making is, the people of Tafo have been coexisting for a long, long time. The people in Agogo, albeit they've had this problem, have been... I worked in Asante region. I used to go to Agogo at least once a month. The Asante Hene's call is good in one way. It means that traditional authority has taken notice of the tenuous nature of the peace in the area. We may have a modern day political arrangement, but if you have lived in Asante mine before, you know that the Asante Hene has authority. I am not one of those people to flippantly espouse modernity and to the neglect of traditional authority. The issue of Agogo is different from the issue of Tafo. Tafo is land ownership authority / religion / indigenous versus a motley collection of, settlers.
Traditional leaders.
Instructive word being motley. In Agogo is perceived to be Fulani versus indigens. Since this matter gained prominence lately, I have sought opinion and heard unconsciously that the Fulani people are actually not the problem, that many of the cattle owners are Ghanaians, and that the Fulani are basically employees of the cattle owners. I think that is a criminal oversimplification. It brings to mind our general attitude as a country towards non-Ghanaian residents. It's a very, very uncomfortable discussion, more so in an election year. We've had people from the Orient tearing our... Hold on. I need to make this point categorically clear. We cannot handle Fulanis separately from the way we ought to be handling Chinese. Because at least with the Fulanis, we have the ECOWAS agreement which guarantees them non-visa entry and exit. And you cannot see by a person's face that a person is Fulani. But you can see a Chinese from a mile away. And the Fulani is necessarily wreaking more havoc on us than the Chinese. When you go to Amansia West, you see the destruction to our environment, the almost slave labor that our people are subjected to. Essentially, Martin, what I'm bringing up here is that I am gladdened that some form of authority in the person or in the institution of the Asantehene has said that he is going to work towards the resolution of this matter. And when the Asantehene speaks, and this is the Asantehene, it does not mean that his person. He has the resource, he has the ears of the president, he has the ears of pretty much every traditional ruler. In fact, every person of, substance. So once his energies are behind it, I am very, very hopeful. I'm just hoping that somehow somebody who has his ear, will let him also address, draw the attention of the people that matter in this country to address the problem of non-Ghanaian settlers. Because I'm afraid in 2035, 2040, 2050, Ghanaians will actually be living on the periphery of Ghana. Chinese will take over. Oh yes. You see what is happening on Osu? I don't call it by name, but I'm sure everybody understands what I'm talking about. What is going to happen? What is happening in Osu and what is happening in Edum in Kumasi?
You have external people living in the originals.
Exactly. And then, they have this apology about, it's economy, it's investors, And when a man controls what you eat, he controls your very being. It's about time. What I'm afraid of is when my good friend here said that when somebody rises in the 21st century and does something about the 20th century. Magufuli is doing it in Tanzania. Truth has no time, respect for centuries. If somebody stands, must be done.
Okay. We are wrapping up in a minute. I'll give that to you on, touching on this same issue.
Martin, clearly I would tell Ghanaians there's a lot more to live for. We still have challenges, every country does. Our problems may not be resolved in a day. It is our collective will to fight on. And I think we have left a lot too many things in the hands of politicians to resolve. What are we resolving in our small corners? If everybody was putting their heads to the wheel, I'm sure in the not too distant future, if our communities were even cleaning them, the central government will have a lot of resources to do other things. Let us try as a people so that in our own time, in our generation, we can have a very clean society, a very peaceful society. It doesn't start from the politician, it starts from us. And I think we all can do what we need to do.
Kasie?
I want to say that yesterday's celebration, I hope, is going to mark the beginning of a united Ghana. The president was rather eloquent in his delivery, and he managed to paint a picture of a very good Ghana. How we all came around the young man Atta, how we take pride in Kofi Annan's achievements, and many more. I hope that the same unanimity of purpose Like my friend said, before independence, we were disagreed exactly as to how soon we wanted independence. Now we've gotten independence, we have conveniently dissected ourselves along some phantasmagoric ideological lines. We should have one national objective. We should make some of our politicians redundant because there can't be a divergent vision for Ghana. Ghana must grow. Ghana must be the beacon that it's always been. If some people cannot come to a consensus as to how to achieve that, they should have to fall by the wayside.
Okay. All right. Food for thought from my guests, just you know, touching on the major issues that happened over the weekend, and then also especially yesterday, which was Ghana's Independence Day. We are 59 years, and if you were working in the public sector, we have just a year to go to retire.